Hey, welcome to Pretty Well. Do you want to get to the root causes of your health concerns? Do you find yourself Googling, why do I feel this way? And looking for solutions to feel great again? I'm Lisa Smith, and I too felt exhausted, achy, and like I was aging too quickly. I wanted to look and feel like myself again, and spent way too much time and money going to practitioners, even functional medicine practitioners, and not getting results. So I became a functional medicine practitioner myself and learned how to identify and fix root causes to health issues. The good news is there is so much you can do to reclaim your wellness. In this podcast, you'll find quick, simple, and evidence-based guidance that you can easily fit into your day so your energy will be soaring, your mind clear, and your skin will return to its beautiful glow. Let's dive in. Hey, welcome back to the Pretty Well podcast. I'm Lisa Smith, and today you are going to love my guests. I have an extra special treat for you. I have Dr. Cristina Romero-Bosch and Dr. John Robinson, and they are known as the Sex Docs on Instagram. They're a husband and wife team behind Scottsdale's premier wellness center. It's called the Hormone Zone. They also host the Longevity Protocol podcast, where they explore hot topics in health, sexual wellness, and longevity. Dr. Robinson specializes in human performance, sexual wellness, and longevity, while Dr. Bosch focuses on women's health, endocrinology, and holistic medicine. Together, they lead the field of integrative and functional medicine, helping individuals to live their best lives by offering cutting-edge medical solutions paired with a deeply personalized approach. Welcome, Dr. Bosch and Dr. Robinson. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
And thanks for that fantastic introduction. And thank you so much. We're really excited.
Oh, same. Hey, you're the sex docs. Let's just jump right in the deep end and talk about sexual health, because nobody wants to feel like their sex life is heading into early retirement, right? So what have you found to be some of the most common root causes of low libido, arousal, poor sexual desire or pleasure? And then what can be done to turn the heat back up?
Well, again, thanks for having us, and because it's such a fantastic question and such an important topic. Not just because we think it's important, it's because we think it's important because patients have come to us over the past 18 years asking about it, and it's a primary thing for them. We always say that, we didn't necessarily just come out of nowhere and say, well, let's just call ourselves the sex docs. It had a lot to do with the fact that patients were coming to us asking about their sex lives, wanting to know how to improve it. And that's what we realized. I mean, it's most people want more energy and they want more sex.
Better sex.
Better sex. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say that there's some usual suspects to the reasons why people start to complain about the quality of their sexual life, I guess. And also, I'd like to point out, Lisa, that it's a lot younger than you would think. I mean, we definitely are getting patients, male and female, coming in their mid-20s that are already starting to say things like, I'm not sure that my sexual health is as optimized as I think it should be.
That is very interesting. Do you think, I don't want to stop our progress on this one question, but I don't want to forget to ask you this. Do you think that's earlier than it used to be?
Yes, without question.
Yeah.
And we can really clearly say that with men. I think it's women too, but definitely with men. And the reason, we'll start with guys. There is a global decline of testosterone and sperm in men. And so we've been seeing this now really over the past, we can now track about 4 generations because we have data going back to the baby boomers and from baby boomer to Gen X to millennial, and now they're coming of age here in the Gen Z. They're in their late teens, early 20s now, and they're starting to come in and have issues as well. And we're just seeing that it's been studied, and so we can see this generation over generation decline of testosterone and sperm. So fertility issues, and again, just the ability for the body, the testicles to produce testosterone for guys, it's just going down.
Yeah, I would be so bold as to add that this is not a feeling that we have, that lack of sexual health, wellness, lack of wellness in your sexual life, I guess is a good way to say that. It's not a feeling that we have that this is getting worse and worse and younger. This is definitely something that we can back up with 18 years of anecdotal evidence that we are observing in our office. So patients coming in with the same story over time, the frequency of the stories are getting more commonly related to younger men having sexual issues. And as Dr. Robinson pointing out, the data. There's just a plethora of data. There's so much data out there letting us know that this is a real problem.
And in practice, I saw it too. When I had an in-person practice, I would see even young women, we're going to talk about both, but I would see young women saying, I'm struggling with vaginal dryness and no libido. And I remember thinking, you are in your mid-20s, like for multiple clients, thinking the same thing. Mine is purely anecdotal. I didn't do a deep dive into the research, but I could see the same pattern happening. So let's talk about why.
Well, let's talk about what it made me think of a really good why for younger women.
Okay.
Because we can say with women just in general, we'll talk about hormones. So there's the quick answer, everybody listen.
Quick answer is hormones.
And we're going to get into it. But let's just speak to...
Wait, hormones and toxins. Okay, sorry,
okay,
go.
Sure.
Okay, yes, okay.
And maybe the gut. Maybe we can talk about that too. But anyway, but definitely hormones.
The mitochondria.
Right, that's right.
All of it. The birth control pill is a problem. The birth control pill is a problem. The birth control pill is a problem. Yeah. So
highlight underscore.
Yes. And we've done different podcast episodes on this and have been talking about this now for a while. You know, I remember when I first came out of school, thinking, well, a woman's on the estrogen birth control pill. And then I would see a younger woman in her 20s and her estradiol levels on her labs was 0. And I was like, how's that? Why is that? And that's because this is a very potent synthetic form of estrogen that actually does not add to the true estradiol levels in your body. It's actually suppressive to the ovaries. And because that's what it's designed to do. It's trying to tell the ovaries not to ovulate. So you're suppressing the ability to ovulate. That's its sort of goal, but you wind up suppressing the ability to make estrogen and testosterone as well. So it just disrupts that general ability for the ovaries to produce things correctly. And then women will come in with hot flashes and night sweats and vaginal dryness and the same things you would usually only see in a menopausal woman that can occur in the 20s. That's one reason.
It's a big one. It's such a disservice what happens and what happens in those conversations. And we're seeing it in pretty early teenage women or girls, I should say, teenage girls. This idea that there is no understanding of what estrogen actually does for the female body. And by the time they're menstruating, I'm sure there's pediatricians that aren't going to love this, but from an endocrine perspective, from a functional endocrine perspective, I would say that by the time a girl is menstruating, physiologically, she's almost wherever she's going to be as an adult female. So I do apply philosophically principles of healing and treatment approach to menstruating teenagers, just as I would to my women in the young 20s, because really those 5 years is not that big of a difference. And we're coming into these super young girls, giving them these ovarian suppressive drugs, and we're talking zero about how that's actually affecting their long-term wellness.
Estrogen is not a 4-letter word. But it's often seen that way. It's my hormones, and it's like I have a hormonal problem. Right. I'm talking about younger women now. And so if you go to your OBGYN with a hormonal problem, they give you the birth control pill. If you have heavy periods, a birth control pill. Light periods, birth control pill. If you get a hangnail, they give you the birth control pill. Everything's the birth control pill. And that winds up, again, being suppressive instead of actually helping. But the estrogen, I think that's what you were probably saying there, that estrogen is important and it should be honored, and it should be, we should figure out how to optimize that even at a young age, all the way into menopause and beyond. How do we optimize that for someone? Because it's a good thing, not a bad thing.
So we would say then that birth control would be one of the primary culprits as to why we're seeing younger females with sexual dysfunction. That would be one of the issues.
Yes.
But ironically, the cause of that suppressed ovarian function, suppressed estrogen levels, is the same as what we're going to see in those peri and postmenopausal females. It's the same thing, right?
Yes. And the birth control pill further, just add a couple more things to that. It's affecting the gut microbiome without question. There are certain certain species that are just going to get affected negatively by having the birth control pill there that further disrupts. Now we've got a gut-brain axis problem there as well, just from what the birth control pill is doing. The birth control pill also masks things on how women are feeling sexually attracted to their mate. For example, and this is really important, I think a lot of women should really take heed on this possible problem. The birth control pill disrupts your immune system in the sense that usually women are attracted to a man with an immune expression, a genetic immune expression that is different from theirs. So there's an opposite attract thing. And the strategy there is that then the offspring have a more diverse type of genetic makeup, and it's a stronger offspring from
Survival of the fittest.
from an immune standpoint, correct. So what's happening is that they get on the birth control pill, it literally it turns that whole thing upside down. They're then attracted to it's like pheromones and those types of attraction molecules. Now they're attracted to something that's more similar to them. Now they're on the birth control pill. They're in that relationship. They're on the birth control pill for years. They decide, okay, let's have a kid. Now they're going to come off the birth control pill. Now they come off the birth control pill. They wake up one morning, turn over and go, who the hell is this guy?
And I don't find it attractive.
Right.
And they're like, no longer turn me on.
Right. Literally.
Oh,
So this
that is fascinating.
So beware. And also we would say we try to generally counsel women to avoid it if they can, the birth control pill, but certainly if there's a relationship that's going on, make sure you're in the midst of that relationship off the birth control pill well before you're thinking of marriage, well before you're thinking of having a baby.
Yeah.
That is groundbreaking, truly, because these things feel like, well, my body's changing and I'm losing my libido, and maybe that's not why, I've had women say that my libido is gone, young women. And I did not know that connection. And so they're like, I love my husband, but I don't want my husband.
Right, exactly.
And
Yeah.
there you go. That gives us a whole lot more information
Sure.
about what's going on there. Let's talk about the testosterone, as you're seeing this diminishment in men, what's happening there?
Yeah, so that would be the same thing. The birth control pill is affecting the ovarian ability to produce not just estrogen, but also testosterone.
So for women.
For women, yeah. So it is definitely affecting testosterone levels as well. And same thing, because testosterone is driving psychological desire and drive to want to have sex. That's what we call libido. But it's also affecting things functionally. That means the structures of the vulva, the ability to have an orgasm, just sensitivity, secretion, those types of things are actually, in large part, really handled mostly by testosterone, estrogen too, for sure.
And I would, since you're referencing men, if we're talking about a female population that's not on birth control, let's just say it's a typical peri or postmenopausal female who's noticing a decline in their sexual health. The things that are going to contribute to that are the same for women and for men in general on a basic level. So I think we're looking at things like their diet, the increased amount of stress, the lack of balance in other hormonal systems. I mean, the body is super sophisticated. It's like this beautiful machine, but it is all intertwined. So people are asking for 1 + 1 = 2 answer, and we're always like, yeah, but here's the algebra of it.
Yeah.
So I think what we have to do is let's describe, like it's our duty as practitioners, the three of us, right? Let's describe to the patient the complexity of how their body works. Let's help give them as much insight as possible so that they can then find an easier time in conviction in changing basic things so that we can try to simplify it into a 1 + 1 = 2. But things that decline testosterone for men.
Yeah, that's if we're going to swing back to guys, we really think that there's social implications as well. We always say that, what your mind is thinking and believing kind of leads to what your body can do. And things like, let's say, for example, in the research competition, if we're watching the Super Bowl and your team wins and my team loses, even though we're not playing the game, we're invested in it. Your testosterone went up because your team won, and mine just went down because my team lost. So there's these sort of implicit things that occur. So the concept just of competition, we see less of that in general. It's not as lauded as much, and lauded, I should say, as much. We don't revere competition as much, and then so we have less of that, particularly among men. Then there's less of that ability for testosterone to actually have an exponential rise. So there's that concept. We certainly believe in general there's this hyper focus on staying away from masculinity, or masculinity is being observed as some type of negative. It's, again, another four-letter word that it's not, that men should be able to be men. And these things, again, truly, literally affect the physiology and the ability to make testosterone and sperm.
So interesting. Yeah. So what I hear you saying is well, first of all, it's so multifactorial, right? And I know we'll get into the role of toxins and endocrine disruptors in the environment that has an impact. But I love that you bring in the emotional piece. I can imagine, there's this dynamic where if a man also is not feeling desired by his wife, and it could be compounded vicious cycle that she's been on the pill for so long that has thrown her balance off, and now he's feeling not desired, that probably diminishes that estrogen or testosterone even more, right? And then, and then if body fat raises, right, we tend to convert our testosterone more to estrogen, and we've got that issue going on. So yeah, it's a very complicated cycle, but in a lot of ways, there's some simple life. And what I heard you saying, Dr. Bosch, is these are simple decisions we can begin to make. And once we have the justification for making them, they stick better, right?
Yes.
And so I do want to unpack that. But before I do that, another thing I heard you saying, Dr. Bosch, that I'd like just to point out again, is that a lot of women, because of the pill, they're already experiencing what we would look at as estrogen deficiency, clearly, because that's intended, but that's causing these perimenopause, menopause symptoms, which I just have to say to our listeners, that stinks. If you're hitting that in your 20s, we want to reverse that. We want you, because when you hit that in it kind of is more commonly now starting at 35, even if you weren't on the pill, ish. Sure. And it's such a drop off the cliff, and you're like, who is this? Who's inhabited my body? What is happening here? So we don't want that for you, not in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, or beyond. So
yeah, it's very true. It's a very true sentence to say that women should not suffer through menopause. Just like women should not suffer through pregnancy. These are not supposed to be diseases. These are just supposed to be stages in the health of the life of a female. They're not an illness. They're not supposed to be burdened and labeled and feared. However, we need to understand them. And then, as I said, once you have some information and some understanding, it is much easier to find discipline in your life to make decisions that are going to improve the quality of your aging process as a female.
Yes, I agree 100%. And then once you have the reasoning behind it, then it makes sense. Otherwise, you get up every day and you're like, okay, M&Ms or kiwi today, right? And you go, oh, wait, this makes a difference. This actually makes a difference. And when you realize it truly changes your life, then you can grab a hold of it and start making those changes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So let's talk about, we talked a little bit about gut health. We just started to dabble in it. They're so closely linked. And you mentioned that, Dr. Robinson. So let's talk about, how do hormones more specifically affect our gut health?
Again, well, first of all, in naturopathic medicine, we say you heal the gut and the rest will follow.
Yeah.
So most things come back to that. That actually goes back to Hippocrates. I mean, there's that concept of making sure that most health is derived out of proper digestion, proper assimilation of food and nutrients. So I think when it comes to estrogen, if again, the birth control pill, as another example, really disrupts the gut microbiome for women. It will not be the regular microbiome that it would be otherwise if they were off the birth control pill. So a lot of those, it's called ethinyl estradiol. So it's a very synthetic form that negatively impacts the gut microbiome. But just in general, let's say when women start to go into menopause, perimenopause and menopause, there is also a disruption in digestion in general. And estrogen has a whole lot to do with, again, keeping that microbiome balanced in the way it should. This is why we know, even just in general, that the risk for colon cancer is higher in menopausal women. Excuse me. And then even just using almost any type of estrogen replacement therapy can decrease the risk for colon cancer. So we know that there's this interrelationship there.
And at a very basic level, when digestion is impaired, even the person who's eating this like perfect, predominantly organic, well-varied diet, if their digestion is impaired, then their absorption of those nutrients goes down. And we do know very clearly in biochemistry, all of these hormonal activities in the body are very dependent on nutritional cofactors. So even if we're replacing a hormone, if we're not taking into consideration or we're not respecting the necessity of the nutrients that that hormone requires, then you aren't necessarily going to get the effect that you're hoping for.
Right. So whether we're talking about replacement or just the natural endogenous, naturally produced hormones that women would have, two common ones are zinc and magnesium. And we check those very, very routinely. And magnesium, probably the number one mineral nutrient deficiency of all mineral deficiencies, zinc right up there with it. So we check that very closely. So what she's saying is that ultimately those hormones can't function well. They can't get from the blood into the actual receptor of the cell in order to function and do well. And guess what depletes magnesium probably better than anything? The birth control pill. I mean, it just robs you of magnesium. It's double whammy.
And I don't want to take us, Lisa, on a tangent. So I'm just gonna drop the kernel and then we can talk about it some other time. But we're just talking about sex hormones. Think about something like thyroid. So another reason why people will have low libido will be thyroid is low. And when the thyroid and the gut are so incredibly connected, you think of hypothyroidism, you'll think of constipation, you think of malnourishment, and then it's this constant negative cycle. And because the body, as I said, is so sophisticated, it's a synergistic system. The hormonal systems work together, they overlap together. So when one system is burdened, you start to have this negative cascade elsewhere.
You sure do. And I get that firsthand. I've had Hashimoto's since my baby. We were talking before we went on air. My baby's 19, but since he was born, I've had Hashimoto's. So I do know, I know the impact on the gut. Your digestion slows down. You don't make enough hydrochloric acid. You don't make the enzymes. Your bloating increases. It is a vicious cycle. And I think we tend to, I don't know if it's, our culture, we tend to look at our ailments in silos. Well, I have hormonal imbalance and we're thinking maybe sex hormones when we say that, but we don't realize it's this symphony. So if one part of the symphony is off, the whole thing is off because of the synergy, right? So I love that you make that point. And truly, boy, gut issues they affect. I've gone on a limb to say I believe everyone has some degree of leaky gut because of our food supply. Even if we eat the best diet, we're still getting exposed to so many more chemicals than our grandparents were and all of that. So to be cognizant of that and really take care of the things to protect the gut health pays you off over and over. And I am with you on the magnesium, hundreds of processes, hundreds that we just, and I think, again, that's something just about everybody would benefit from. So let's talk about what are some of the biggest myths you see in hormone therapy or just in hormonal health in general? I know you have so many patients coming in and whether you're like, here it goes again, this is that same myth all over again.
Yeah, I've been having fun with this one lately. Again, we've been doing this for 18 years. We've been around this for a long time. We have heard all the myths. We've heard things that we had to sort of figure out ourselves just through our own course of our career to discern what was a myth or what was not. But lately, thank God, we have more of an understanding that estrogen just doesn't cause breast cancer. I'm here to say it. I'm here to say it proudly. I've been biting the inside of my cheek perhaps for 18 years.
Uh,
And knowing that, because there's like standards of care and things that you have to work with when you're a doctor, when you're licensed to do something. You have to kind of work through certain things, and you have to wait for medical dogma sometimes to die and for things to catch up. But ultimately, for 18 years, we have been saying that certainly natural bioidentical estrogen was not increasing the risk for breast cancer, even though conventional wisdom would still say no, an estrogen is an estrogen is an estrogen. It's all the same, the synthetic or not, it's all the same, and it increases your risk. But what has happened recently, and I would encourage everyone to check out a book by Dr. Macri called Blind Spots. And in Blind Spots, Dr. Macri talks about medical dogma and various things. Well, one great example is a guy named Semmelweis, and Dr. Semmelweis was a Hungarian doctor in the early 1800s who was the first one to say, I think we should wash our hands before we help these women give birth, because women were dying of puerperal fever and all these problems. And then he said, wash hands. And then all the conventional wisdom, the dogma at the time said, no, you're crazy. We're gentlemen. We can't have diseases on our hands.
Right.
And then essentially this guy wound up dying in an insane asylum for his opinion, like literally. So that was like one thing.
And who knew?
And who knew? Right, yeah,
Apparently
wow,
somebody did.
wash your hands, duh. But yeah, we say that now, like we can all laugh about it, but at the time that was a dogma that no one would have generally opposed. So now we have the Women's Health Initiative that came out in 2002 that, well, I should say come out, the sort of headline part of that Women's Health Initiative study, and this was a study where they were at 2002, by that time it was already about 10 years in on that study of looking at what does estrogen do in a woman's body? And then they started going, wait a second, we think maybe this is causing breast cancer. So in the book Blind Spots, Dr. Macri goes through and explains literally what happened. It's like out of a novel.
It's like an expose.
Yeah. That what happened was there was all the primary investigators, they call them the PIs, they would all go to this conference. They went to Chicago, and there's like this head woman and a head guy, I forget their names, and they basically stood behind the lectern and said, our whole what we're getting ready to do right now for this conference, it's all scrapped. We have this article right here. We're getting ready to publish it literally today, and it says estrogen causes breast cancer. And they presented the paper to all of the other scientists and the investigators in the audience, and they looked at the paper and they went, wait a second, this is not what this says. You're showing us the data. This is not statistically significant. That it is not actually showing a statistical significance of breast cancer increase.
They misrepresented.
They misrepresented. So they said, okay, we'll let you have an opportunity to do an addendum to this article before we publish it today. And so they all sat there and they scrambled, and we said, we'll give you 2 hours. So they gave them 2 hours, and they came up with the addendum, and then they handed it to her, and she went, sorry, the courier already came. We just sent it off to the courier. It's going to be published. I mean, again, literally, it's like you couldn't make this stuff up. So what happened then after that was that no one was allowed to dissent. No one was allowed to say that. And if they did, they were ostracized. So this is like a sort of a la COVID type of thing, that there was not allowed to be different opinions about what was seen and what was going on. And so many of them just had to shut up, even though they knew it was kind of BS. They couldn't say anything. And then once you tell a lie long enough, loud enough, eventually it becomes true. That's like a Joseph Goebbels, type of approach to propaganda. Just tell the lie and be the first one to say the lie, and then everyone just accepted it. Yeah. And that was it. And so here we went 23 years without women having access to estrogen. And it was literally a generation of women being denied and having a lot of fear, because, I would have patients come in, we both would, that would still have a certain level of fear that we couldn't extract that fear out of them. The damage was already done. The dogma was already in place. So that would be the big, now fast forward, people are starting to finally admit these things. Even Dr. Macri interviewed one of the key women for that, and she kind of admitted it didn't fully admit it, but she pretty much admitted it, that they knew that the data was not exactly on point the way they represented it. So yes, it does not increase the risk. There's been even more recent, very robust examination of the Women's Health Initiative data to further say it's not a problem. It is not a problem for women to, because they would also say women should not, if they didn't start estrogen at the time of menopause and they go 10 years, they shouldn't start it then. That's all
Yeah.
wrong. That's all completely wrong. It is never too early and it is never too late. So you can always start it. So there's women out there that have been, frozen into fear regarding these kinds of risks, whether it was heart things and breast cancer, you can start it now. So that would be one of the biggest myths. And I've been very happy to be able to really say this more robustly. Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, we're making these generalized comments. I think what's very important, I hope one of the take-home messages for listeners is always that when the system is so complex, you really want to make sure that you're having individualized medicine. You, Lisa, you had mentioned this idea of how we silo symptoms. It's because conventional modern medicine, it doesn't matter what the practitioner is. I don't care if they're naturopathic, allopathic, osteopathic, it doesn't seem to matter. It's very reductionistic, and that's not what's true about the laws of nature in the body. It's a complex, there's a more functional approach that is more accurately representing the way the body works. So when you're reducing things into one symptom with one answer, and it's the constituent of ascorbic acid versus the concept of vitamin C in an orange, you're missing the point. So I do think listeners need to say, okay, I'm an individualized system. How can I find a person that's going to listen to me and really think outside of the box when they're analyzing the labs?
Yes, and look at me holistically. Again, not just test my sex hormones, but look at all of these different hormones, including thyroid and cofactors, as you mentioned, the vitamin cofactors and mineral cofactors.
Yeah.
I love that you highlight all of that, and I really appreciate you unpacking the Women's Health Initiative, because that has done more damage to women's health over the years than anything I know of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I was looking for someone very dear to me. They are in a different state, and I've said, you may, as you're, in menopause and having these symptoms, you may want to consider bioidentical hormone replacement. In fact, I would urge you to consider that. And, they didn't know where to look, and I said, I'll help you look. I'll help you find someone in your state that you can work with. And I have to tell you, there are websites that say, from doctors, medical doctors who are hormone specialists, you see the air quotes, who say we need to be careful with estrogen because of its ability to its link to breast cancer. And I thought, no, not still. You still have that in writing on your website.
Yeah.
Can you get with the times? Do you know what year it is? Like,
Right.
come on. So it still is being propagated. It's still, I'm not as widely. Now people are getting much more
You're
savvy.
seeing, even like in the past 12 months, you're seeing this sort of resurgence. But yeah, you're speaking to I always say that doctors, conventionally minded doctors, they're inside a box and they like their box. Their box protects them. Their box guides them for the good or the bad of it in their mind. But when it has to do with standard of care, like if you go outside of standard of care, you're going to get, maybe in trouble. Maybe your license gets taken away. So they get that the system puts them into this box, and then the patient suffers. So we just have a different box that we're in. We got a big old box, and we
made our own.
and we made our own, and we sort of go outside of it, and we're just intrepid for the sake of the patient. That shouldn't really be anything like revolutionary, special. That just should be medicine. That's what a doctor. What were we watching? We were watching Yellowstone last night, and the doctor had to, drill a hole in the head of this guy who had a subdermal hematoma, right in like somebody's bedroom, because that's what he had to do. He did that was it's 1923, whatever. So he had to do that. So medicine is about that. It's about treating the patient, the human in front of you that way.
Yes. And Dr. Bosch, you make a great point too. Again, it still must be deeply personalized, because we're making these blanket statements, but each person still has nuances that need to be taken into consideration.
Yeah. And the thing about that, about being in the box or creating your own box, or this doctor in the 1920s, boldly doing a procedure he had never done before, which was one of the crazy things. He was like, I've never done it before, is that when the patient has a higher sense of responsibility for themselves and for their decisions, the doctor also has the freedom to be a little bit more bold. I mean, to a certain extent, we also have to give the doctor some credit here. They often stay inside the box because when they don't, they suffer. And physicians dedicate their lives. I mean, I do strongly believe that most people go into medicine with incredible intention to make a positive difference in people's lives. But the system does little by little keep squeezing you into this box where you have to follow the dogma at risk of losing your career, your passion, your investment. And that's also not fair. So the more patients can say, I'm willing to work with a doctor that thinks out of the box because I am taking responsibility for myself, the better it's going to be for everybody.
Great point. Great point. We know that the very first tenet of the oath you take is first do no harm.
Yes.
So that is always running in the background. First do no harm. And if the patient is scared of something, do you really want to go on a limb? Like if they're already scared, you don't want them coming back and saying, I didn't want to do this in the first place. So you're right. The agency that the patient takes
That's a
gives
good word.
more leeway.
Should empower patients to take responsibility. We always do it that way. It's a yet again the old school that well the doctor said, doctor's orders, these kinds of things. We don't really ascribe to that. It's a relationship, and patients have to have their own agency, and then we're working with that concept with them to lead them into where they want to be for themselves.
Great point. That definitely gives you more freedom. You know, it's funny, you've just articulated something that even as a practitioner, feel in my gut. If someone's really hesitant and scared, I go far more conservatively for their comfort, but also for my own comfort, because I don't want to be out on a limb and someone come back and say, well, Lisa told me to.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it hurt me or whatever.
Right, that's right. And you did mention of the notion of the psychology or the energetics of a decision. A person needs to want to make the change. A person needs to believe in the power of the change. That doesn't mean they're not afraid. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. That doesn't mean any of those, any of those things that you might think that it's a foolproof and it's guaranteed. No, it's not. There are no guarantees. Medicine is a science, but it's very much an art. And because it's individualized, I always tell a patient, like, I just met you. I just met your body. I don't know how you're going to respond. These are my suggestions based on my expertise. Let's make decisions together.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's very good. Well, let's talk about something you call the well-lived life. What do you mean by that? Living the well-lived life.
Yeah, we call ourselves the sex docs, and then of course we wind up talking a lot about sexual wellness. And it's really a bridge from that we weren't just simply talking about sex, and we can certainly, especially on this podcast, talk about more of that and what that means medically and all of that. But it's about, we see sex as something to where it's relationship based, and it's about intercoursing with the world and taking in life. You had mentioned earlier on about the concept of pleasure, because that's really in the end ultimately what it should be about. We should have the ability and the agency to experience pleasure, and we see it that way. So that's taking in life as it is across the board.
Yeah.
And how else would you say that?
Yeah, we will also tie it into this notion of, I keep calling it common sense medicine, or forget medicine, common sense health, common sense health. Like I was having some body work done yesterday. Great body work, great conversation. And we were talking about the idea of the cold plunge. And I said, yeah, now social media is 1,000% anti-cold plunge. Everybody on social media says cold plunge is bad. And I'm like, what? It's like we never learn. Stop swinging that pendulum with a fad when it comes to your wellness. The body is not having this dramatic evolutionary change every year based on what's a fad. Every month. It's not what's true. If you feel invigorated when you do the cold plunge, do the damn cold plunge. If you hate it, it makes you feel more tired and more depleted, then by all means, enjoy the sauna. Or as we would suggest, do what makes you feel best depending on the season. So the well-lived life is this idea, like Dr. Robinson is saying, of have great sex, be happy, be fulfilled, eat delicious food, move your body. Don't see it as the burden of exercise. See it as the pleasure of movement, sun, good physicians to work with you along the way. Like, just be happy. If you're going to live to 100 and something, enjoy it.
Yes, beautiful. It really is looking at life and all the aspects of life as opportunities, blessings, if you will. Like, I get to, I've had a hip thing bugging me this past few weeks, and it's just bugging me. It's an impingement. I'm pretty active, so that's been very annoying. But it made me realize that I took for granted that I didn't have a hip thing up until a few weeks ago. And so it's helping me to rethink, what I don't have an elbow thing going on right now, or a shoulder thing, so it's just, again, looking at all of life through a different lens of, I get one chance to make this the richest set of experiences that I can make it rich and purposeful and enjoyable and pleasurable, like all those things. And I do think we need to sometimes get out of the rut, thinking, oh, I gotta get up, I gotta go do this today, where you get to go do it.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I wanted to say this about just longevity as I guess now is a new medical discipline, a new market. The concept of biohacking, anti-aging medicine, and anti-aging as a term has been around since the late 90s. So this idea, the reason I think we are saying the well-lived life, and the reason we're coming at it from that angle, and many of these things that we're just talking about now, about imbibing life, is because it's a counterbalance to the over technical thing that, and by the way, I get kind of technical. I dork out all the time. I like that. But I think any of us as we're practicing this, whether we are practitioners of this type of longevity medicine, or we're just practitioners of it, we're advocates of it, you can get really linear and hyper granular into the details about what that means. Or, to some degree, I've seen some of these people, I'm going to live, over to 120 or more, and they're not living. They're not living. They're doing all these things in these micro minutia kind of ways, and they're missing the point of living well. So, okay, I lived to 100, but I did it well. You lived to 110, but you stayed in a bubble.
Right.
I mean, okay, I'll take the 100,
I agree with you. I have to do all these biohacks. I have to
Yeah, the
take,
biohack,
and I have to do all these. When are you just going out for a walk, walking on the beach, or just, maybe they are. I'm not trying to be judgy, but on the other hand, I'm like, all this formula, like, it doesn't have to be a formula. Live your life. But
Well, that's what patients want. They want the formula. So we will turn to them and sometimes say, yeah, you just need to go for a walk. And they're like, yeah, but where's the pill? Where's that? Yeah, but it's got to be more. I'm special. I have all these problems going on. I'm the most complex patient you've ever seen. There's got to be more of a complex answer. I'm not going to accept that you just want me to go for a walk. So there's some of that, and again, I'm not trying to blame the patient. A lot of times they were taught to think that way in medicine.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is very true. Like, go take a walk, have good sex, and eat a good meal, and like, let's talk to you next week.
You'll be fine. Go drink some water.
But let's take a step back and get a little more granular, because if someone is dealing with chronic pain or vaginal dryness and atrophy, where sex is really, really painful, if not impossible, or other things are going on, let's take a step back and say, what are some things first of all, they need, in my opinion, that's not something you DIY, like self-hacked, like you go meet with an expert who's really good at what they do. But let's talk about some first steps before they even find an expert. What can they start doing to help bring some relief? Because those are very real problems too. I'm not trying to make light of those, because they suck, honestly. So what do we do now to give some things to take away that you can at least help get started until you find somebody who can help you get to the next level of health?
Well, I just want to say that the first thing is to really recognize that these are not mutually exclusive concepts. Most people do have a true granular symptom, problem, dysfunction that needs to be addressed, preferably, again, very strongly, let me say, preferably with a knowledgeable practitioner that is a good listener and thinks out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, still recognize how sitting in the sunlight, eating well, and finding joy in your life, despite that granular problem, those things can and should exist because they will help heal each other. The more balanced, the more joyful you are in other aspects of your life, the easier it will be to deal with that kink in your hip that's got you otherwise uncomfortable.
But if a patient's going to come in and have these types of symptoms, you're saying we are going to listen. We're going to give them time. That's probably one of the biggest commodities that this type of medicine offers is the time. We're going to recognize it. We're not going to just say it's all in your mind.
Right.
We don't play all of that. We were
Gosh.
saying those other things there it was like sort of another extreme. But if a patient's going to come in and sit in front of us, we're going to listen to every single detail and want to understand all of that to understand their process. And so, yes, but let's just say before they would even come to see us, to answer your question, water, please drink water. So if the vaginal dryness, the first thing I'm going to say is how much water do you drink? Secondarily to that, if not almost equal, is essential fatty acid intake. So where is that essential fatty acid level? We actually check for things like that. From a blood work standpoint, but sometimes just having a basic conversation about the quality of their diet as it relates to essential fatty acids, because dryness or SICA, these types of things that occur, skin, eye, or vaginal dryness, often come from an essential fatty acid deficiency. So those are the top two quick, easy fixes that anybody can do right now at home. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water.
And I would add two more. The first one is protein. I think people are severely, women in particular, especially postmenopausal women, severely undereat protein. Well, I think they undereat, period. I mean, we always say America's fat, not because we eat too much. It's because we eat too much crap at the wrong time and with lack of frequency. So number one is protein, because those amino acids are going to be the building blocks for repair. They're going to be the building blocks for neurotransmitter function. So your brain and your mood and your emotions and your cognition, all of that is going to work better. The second thing that I would add is just gentle movement. Again, I think that there's a lot to be said for when we're most stressed out or when we are most in pain is when people most want to retreat, to just sit down and relax. But they don't actually end up feeling relaxed because their body is just getting more and more stagnant. So really simple things like taking a walk around the block when the sun is setting, or early in the morning, those are incredible things that most people can do safely. And if they use that time to converse so that they have a partner, again, let's say you have pain, you're walking with someone, that gives you a sense of security as well. If you have a flare up or if you're elderly and you're scared of falling, right, you're walking with someone, but it gives you an opportunity to actually converse. So there's all these like added benefits that you're getting. But we would say water, fatty acids, protein and frequency of eating, and gentle movement. They're foundational, they're free, everyone can do it.
Yeah, excellent. None of those are going to break the bank. And I just want to take one minute to talk about essential fatty acids, because I think that can be confusing for people. Our ratio of omega-3 to 6s should be around 32 threes to like 1/6, and it's the other. It should. I'm sorry, I got my numbers mixed up. It should be 4 to 1, and 6s to 3s. That's what it should be. Okay, so guys, I'm going to unpack this for you again. Our 6s we get from nuts and seeds and oils that we use in cooking, even good oils like olive oil. Those are 6s, and they should be a ratio of 4 to 1 omega-3. That's what we get from fatty fish, salmon primarily, those kinds of anchovies, sardines, those kinds of things. But as Americans, this is where the 32 comes in. Research shows that we're 28 to 32 6s to 1 3. 3 is the anti-inflammatory one, that fatty fish one. So that is where we see a lot of the dryness and the inflammation coming in, because we tend to have lots of 6s in our diet, but very few 3s. So that's where I make a case often for, if you don't like fish, don't gag it down. As a dietitian, my background is eat what you like, as long as it's good, real food. But that's where supplementation does become something that you want to look into. And check out further.
And
But
nowadays, I mean, yeah, high quality fish oil is not hard to find. Most of it's micro distilled, and and meaning you don't have to worry about mercury and all these things we would have been worried about. And they're not fishy tasting. Generally speaking, you can find a good quality.
Yeah, I mean, I would say most Americans, actually, I would say probably all Americans need some form of nutritional supplementation, but it is about the quality of the product, and you do get what you pay for. I mean, if you were seeing an omega-3 product that's $5 for the bottle and you're seeing another one that's $30 for the bottle, usually there is a very strong reason why. And it's not so much as simple as saying, well, you're getting better stuff with the more expensive product. It's also very important to recognize that you're getting a lot of bad stuff, usually with the cheaper product. So that's an important consideration as well.
it's great to point out because I do, so many people have, mentioned to me like, oh, I went to the big discount store or whatever, fill in the blank.
Right.
And I got this big bottle of omega-3s and I'm thinking, oh man, just spend the money and get a Nordic Naturals or something.
Nordic Naturals.
No, it's high quality. You're getting what they say is in the bottle. There's someone who checked it and said that's in the bottle, and you don't want all the bad stuff that's in it with it. But thank you for those 4 points. Those are 4 takeaways we can take away right here, right now, that someone could start today. They could increase their hydration. They could filter water, please, so you're not taking in more toxins from the tap water. They could look at their omega-3s and consider supplementing. Protein, yes, Dr. Bosch, absolutely. It can be a struggle, but make sure you're getting 25 to 30 grams, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then gentle restorative movement. And you bring in then community and relationship building and sunlight all in the same walk or that time outside. So great.
I'd like to offer a bonus as well. I think a great take home for listeners is the idea that I find when you're making lifestyle changes, that it is always easier to focus on adding in the things that are good for you than working so hard on taking away the things that are bad for you, so to say. Because the things that are bad for you that you do habitually, usually there's some emotional component to that. And sometimes even chemical, like actual addiction to my coffee or to my sugary drink or to whatever. But if you focus on saying, I'm going to take 1 month to consistently add one thing that's good for me, like more water. Beautiful. That was an incredible building block. From there, you can add something else next month. You're not in a rush because this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So just take your time, focus on one task, add in something good, and succeed at that one goal, and then be like, good job. How can I do something else?
Great advice. Get it so you totally bring it into who you are and what you do, and then you add the next one. Guys, you are so much fun to talk to. You're delightful. So how do people work with you? How do they find you? How do you work? Do you work virtually with patients? What does that look like?
So we can work virtually. We are located in Scottsdale, Arizona. So the name of our private practice is the Hormone Zone. So if patients want to come to sunny Scottsdale, come before it gets too hot,
Right.
then they could visit us here. But we have the ability to still do virtual experiences with patients on the front end if that's what they're looking for. There'd be less ability to treat and perhaps prescribe. But if patients come to see us once and then we establish diagnosis, then we can then complete and continue care
Treat them
from afar. So that's one other way. They can also follow us on Instagram at the Sex Docs. That's a little bit more some of our personal things and just things as it relates to relationships and sex and other aspects of health, of course. Also the Longevity Protocol podcast that we now have had for about the past 6 months. We're certainly having a lot of fun with that, where we talk about all kinds of things, a lot in and around sex and sexual relationships, but all kinds of concepts with health, many of the things that we've been talking about today.
Wonderful. That's a lot of resources. So, and congratulations on your podcast. That's a big undertaking. That's lots of fun, but definitely a big undertaking.
It is, yes.
Okay, so guys, check out Doctors Bosch and Robinson at the Hormone Zone on their website, the Sex Docs on Instagram, and the Longevity Protocol podcast. I'm guessing wherever everyone gets
the
their
usual places, absolutely,
Okay.
Apple, etc.
Wonderful. And I know on your website, I've checked it out. You've got lots of resources and lots of different things for people to consider as well. So I'll have all of that in the show notes, as well as the book, The Blind. Is it? I took a note.
Blind Spots.
Blind Spots book. Yes, I'll have all those links in the show notes. Thank you for joining us today. You've been delightful.
Yes, it was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yes, and guys, thanks for tuning in, and I will be back next week. Until then, stay pretty well. Bye.